Hello, my name is Henry Emfrey. This is a Cerberus X game development tutorial. Cerberus X is a game programming language made by Mark Sibly and the same people who created and formulated its ancestor game programming language called BlitzBASIC. A little bit of history. Before there was Unity, Godot, and all of these new game development tools, BlitzBASIC was a programming language made to make game development easy, especially for beginners. And Cerberus X is still staying true to that. Now, after BlitzBASIC, there came MonkeyX. And all Cerberus X is a renaming of the original MonkeyX game programming language. It is MonkeyX with just a different name. In fact, according to this website, if you remember the original MonkeyX and you made games in the original MonkeyX, your game should be able to run in here too. You should be able to run your game right out the box with little to no change. Now later on, there was MonkeyX 2, which is this website here. And I've covered MonkeyX 2 in another tutorial. And I, by the way, made a BlitzBASIC tutorial as well. I did 3D tutorials in both BlitzBASIC and MonkeyX 2. The links are below. Now, in theory, Cerberus X was made for people who wanted to continue to make their game pretty much true to the original MonkeyX's format. And MonkeyX 2 was made for people who wanted something slightly different. They almost have the same syntax, formatting. Both were made to write games once in the language and deploy your games onto various platforms, like it says here. So if you could develop in one, you should be able to pick up the other very, very easily. And one more thing that I like about these languages is they try to replicate the basic programming language. BASIC stands for Beginner's All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code. And BASIC to me is the original programming language that was originally used to make games for Atari, Commodore 64, Apple, IBM, Texas Instruments when they were around, and arcades. And for the record, BASIC is my favorite programming language of all of them. To me, it's nostalgic, and it is something about the old school feel that I like. And I like that I don't have to worry about brackets like I do in C++, Java, JavaScript, and PHP, nor do I have to worry about indentations like I do in Python. In BASIC, you could just make your stuff, and that's it. Once you learn one, you can learn the others. You can learn JavaScript and C++ and all those other ones. And you can learn these languages and immediately be able to build websites and all that stuff. Or you could also go to more modern tools like Unity and Godot and all those others. Or if you want to, you could just stick with this. And anyway, you can make great games with these. So whether it's Cerberus X or MonkeyX 2, you can make whatever you want. For 3D, MonkeyX 2 uses Mojo 3D, and Cerberus X uses something called Vortex. I haven't tried the Vortex yet, but that's the module for this Cerberus X language. And now for the game development stuff. In this language, I will be making a very basic fighting game. These were some of my favorite games during the original Nintendo days, before there was the Switch, GameCube, and all those. There were some very popular games back then, and they set the foundation for games today. Thus, this is what I'll be showing you. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that you do is go to www.cerberus-x.com and then you go to Cerberus X and click download. And then when you get to this page, you scroll down and click the download button. and download the latest version of Cerberus X. It'll be a zip file, and then you click save. I've already downloaded mine to my desktop, so that's what you do. And then after that, you go into this zip file here. After you download the zip file, you can see that I've created this Cerberus folder here. That's the place where you're going to put all your items that are abstracted from this zip file. So you click on this zip file here, and instead of dragging this folder to the desktop, it's better to extract all, and then browse, and then select that folder that I just told you about. I select this Cerberus X, and then click select folder, and then extract. Otherwise, if you drag it to the desktop, number one, it might take longer for all your files to get abstracted, and there's a chance that all your files won't get extracted to your folder, and then that's where you might get errors and stuff when you try to launch this program. So do it that way. So I've already done that. So then after you extract your files, you go into Cerberus, and then you click on this Cerberus application file here. We're going to click File and then New. And I'm going to name this Henry Fighting Game Tutorial. And click Save. You can name yours whatever you want. This is what I'm going to name mine. So then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to open this up again. And then I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to right click and then go to New, click Folder. And then this new folder, I'm going to name it Henry Fighting Game Tutorial. And here's the important part, .data. Because this is where I'm going to store all my images that I'm going to use in my game. So this is important. It's important that you have the exact same name on both your game file and your folder, so that this program can read from this folder here. Okay, so after that you can just click cancel. I'm going to go ahead and just paste in some pre-written code that I've written. And what I pasted in is just a template in which you want to start all your games off with. I named my class Henry Game. You can name it whatever you want. I named this first field Game Canvas. You can name that whatever you want. I named this Load Game, but you can name this whatever you want to. So this is the way you want to start all your games off. It's just this little template here. And we're just going to add things into it. And you might want to just go ahead and copy this down and then save it somewhere. And then, like I said, whenever you create a game, you can just copy and paste this template into your new game. You can copy and paste this template into your fighting game, and next time copy and paste this template into your race car game. And so this is a good template to start with. So copy it down. And one more thing that we want to do before we paste in is just go ahead and run this. So after we launched our program, you get Internet Explorer. And if you don't have any errors down here, then that means the template that we launched was successful. So then we can carry on. We're going to try to put in this background image. Before I made this tutorial, I used a program called Paint.net to make this. So now that I got my background image, I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to go to that Cerberus folder that I made earlier, that we talked about earlier. And then I'm going to go to my folder that I made, this Henry Fighting Game Tutorial folder that I made earlier. Click on that. And down here I'm going to make this a JPEG file. I like to make my backgrounds JPEG. And then I'm just going to name this My Background. You can name it whatever you want, but this is what I'm going to name mine. And then after that, I'm just going to click the Save button. then click OK. I created these animations for our characters. Right here I made the left punch, the right punch, and these two will be for the walking to the right, and these two will be for walking to the left, and this one will be our idle animation. You can see how these animations work. You know, this is for walking to the right, and this is for walking to the left. So, and then, you know, when we do our punch, let's say our character is standing to the right. Well, this is what he will look like when he punches. It kind of looks like a little cheap animation, but anyway, this is just to show you how this stuff works. And same thing with the left. If I'm doing with this left standing, this is what it'll look like when he's punching to the left. And one thing I want you to notice is all of these animations that I have here are 70 by 111. For example, this punch animation is 70 by 111. This right punch animation is 70 by 111. The walking animation, this and this is 70 by 111. This is 70 by 111. My idle animation is 70 by 111. They're all 70 by 111. And that's important. Keep smooth animation frames. And basically the way I made these, for instance, the walk animation, I just cut the legs off and then just these legs on. But I kept the body the same. You know, same thing here, same thing here. And with the punch animation, I just deleted this arm here and then created this arm. So that's basically all I did. But again, I kept all the frames the same. So now I'm just going to save all these animations into our game folder. We're going to save them all as PNG files. If you're using paint.net, make sure you got PNG file. And okay, so I'm going to save the right. I'll save the left. Walking. I'm just going to pause the rest of this video and this process speeds up, and I'll meet you on the other side when all of this is complete. Okay, welcome back. So now if I open this folder again, you'll see that all of our animations have been completed. We got our right animations. These two are for the right. These two are for the left. This is left, the punch left and punch right. And we got our idle. Okay, so now that we got all our animations, we're going to connect them. We're going to create a sprite sheet. And I'm going to do that with this website here called Animated GIF Maker, easygif.com. And this is the web address. You can use whatever animation program you want, but this is what I use to make my animations for 2D games. So when I get to this website, the first thing that I do is click on APNG. When you do that, you should see this animated PNG maker here. That's what we want, because our sprite sheet is going to be a big PNG file. So now we choose our files. So we go back to our desktop and we find our files in our folder. And now I hold down the control key and just click on these files here. But we're not going to pull in these two yet. We're just only going to deal with the walking kind. After you do that, you click the open at the bottom, and then you click upload. Okay, now we're going to arrange these. I want the right animations to go first. Right. Okay, so we got our right animations together, and they're first. And then we got our left animations to go next, and these two are last. And then we got our idle animation. So next you want to click don't stack frames. I'm going to uncheck this box here. And then I'll click make APNG. Okay, so this is our animation. So next we're going to click convert and to sprite. And then we're going to uncheck custom grid and click stack horizontally. Then convert to sprite sheet. Okay, so this is our sprite sheet. So now, after you did this, and then after you see that they're in the way that we set them, we click save. And so we're gonna save this in the folder that we talked about. I'm gonna name this Henry. And then I'll click save at the bottom. You can't see it on the screen, but that's what you click at this point. So now we're gonna go back to the folder that we started with. And now that we got our sprite sheet here, we can just go ahead and delete these because we don't need them anymore. Because they're all here. And then after that, we just go back to coding. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to paste in some code that I've pre-written. And these are variables that I created. The variable that I'm going to use for I'm just going to call it background. And background X and background Y has to do with where my background will appear on the screen. So X and Y has to do with where. These are divided into sections. You got the method onCreate, and this onCreate section ends where it says end here. We have our load game method, and it ends where it says end here. Same thing with onUpdate and onRender. So that's that. So now I'm just going to paste this in. So here I use my variable name that I use for my image. And remember, we named our background, my background.jpg. See, remember that JPG file that we made? Remember? Let's open it. And here it is right here. So that's what we did. And then next, in order to render anything onto screen, we have to draw it onto the screen. See up here we just set our variables. Here we load our image into the memory, and then here we actually draw what we loaded. So, and you remember I used these variable name, this variable name, background, and the location. See, background and location. So let's run it. You can just click this build run, and let's see what happens. And bam, there goes our background. So our background is inside of Internet Explorer. That's not just good, that's good. I always say that on tutorials. And one more thing that I want to post in this code example is just a little bit of miscellaneous code. Since we're dealing with as just a programming language, and since we don't have a scene editor, I would do something like this. I'll post this code here. I always do this in my coding. This just allows me to move the images in the game to where I want them. For example, here I'm going to work with the background. When we launch our game, I can just put the background exactly where I want it, exact coordinate where I want it. And I'll show you how this works. Right here, I'm using the Y key to make the background go up when I press the Y key. I'm using the B as my down key to control my background if I want my image to go down. Same with the right, I'm using the H key, and same with the G. And this part here just tells me exactly where the background is at on the X coordinate, and this part here tells me where the background is at on the Y coordinate. So it works just like a scene editor. So I'm going to launch my game, and I'm going to show you. So this is how you make a game without a scene editor. For example, now let's say I wanted my background to be here. You can see that background is on the 0 of the X coordinate and 0.65 on the Y coordinate. So if I go back to my code example, I can just go back here and keep the 0 as my X coordinate and put 0.65 as my Y coordinate. So then if I relaunch the game, that's exactly where my background will be. 0 X coordinate and 0.65 for my Y coordinate. And you can do that with all of your images. If you're trying to deal with the coordinates of where exactly you want your character, you can just switch this let's say you're trying to deal with Henry's coordinate, you just switch this name around, and so forth, and it changes the coordinates down here too. And then you relaunch the game, and if Henry were an object here, if you're trying to move Henry around, you can move him to exactly where you want him to be. And you can do that with all your characters, your images, your platforms, your backgrounds, your enemies. You can put them wherever you want them using this method, because we're not working with Unity here. So now that we got our background and everything, we're going to now deal with putting our character on screen. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to paste in these variables. This is going to be the walking variable. This Henry walking part is going to be where we store our animated images that we worked on earlier. This next variable is going to be the amount of frames that we got all together. Remember we made 5 frames, remember? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's what this number is. And then when we deal with our walking animation, there's going to be times where we're going to have to specify which frame we're using. So as you know, we have 5 images. And remember, in computer programming, when you're dealing with something like images, especially in this programming language, as humans we count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But computers, they start with 0. So this would be 0, and then this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So just remember that. I think it works that way with most languages. Altogether, we have 5 images, and so I put that here. The next thing will be the frame that we're dealing with. For example, if we're doing the walking animation, we'll start with the 0 animation here. If we're walking to the right, the animation will be 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. If we're walking to the left, the animation will be 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. I don't know why I put this here. Let me delete that. So we have that. And next we're going to put in the position. This is where Henry's going to start at on screen. Okay, so now we're going to look at on create. And before I do anything, I'm just going to put this background part here instead of in the load game section for what we're going to do next. In this on create section, we're going to load our animated image into the game. We're not going to post it yet. We're just loading our animated character. So I'm just going to paste it in here. So we use our variable name, just like we did with the background. We use our variable name, our variable name, image, image here too, just like we hit. So we use our image name, and then we got the name of the file, Henry, .png. See this PNG file, and then we put in the amount of frames all together. Because otherwise, if we don't do this, we'd just have all the frames on one screen all together, and it would look weird. So we specified all the frames that we got. And next, we go down to the render section. Here is when we actually make it so you can see what we loaded here. We do that with just this one command right here. We're going to deal with the frame where Henry's standing. It's going to be this first frame here, 0. Now let's launch our game. Okay, so Henry was loaded successfully. If you followed all the steps correctly, it should look like this. All right, so now we're going to work with animations now. So we go back up here, and now I'm going to paste in this part. Okay, so here we have our timer. I'm going to just put these timers together. The way I program, I like to have everything together. For example, I'd rather have my timer. If we have any kind of timer, I put those together. If we have frames, I put those together. Up here, you see I put the positions together. Up here, the positions are together. And images are always on top. I mean, that's just my way. You can do it any way you want. But okay, so here we're dealing with the timer, because if you don't have a timer in between your animation frames, it just won't look right and it won't work right. And then I don't know why we have this here. This should actually be here. In between the frames that we're dealing with, we're going to have a timer. That's what this is saying. Okay, so let's go down here. So next we're going to go to the render section. And then I'm just going to paste in this code here. Don't let it scare you. I'm going to explain everything. Okay, so this part has to do whenever we press the right key, Henry will move to the right. And that's what this part is. Position Henry's just going to keep moving to the right. That's what this Henry position equals Henry position plus 2 part says. And then this line where if millisec, this is just a timer between these seconds here that we have. Do these animations right here. That's all that means. I mean, it's just something that you copy down. I mean, even if you don't understand, just copy it. All it is we're making our character walk right here. And then same thing here. Here this part moves the character again, and this just spawns the left walking animation. Make sure, like I said, make sure all your parts are closed. You know, every if statement ends with endif. So see, if endif, if endif. Make sure you have that right, because otherwise, if you have a mistake, your whole program won't work. Okay, so now let's test a game and see what happens. Oops. Oh, it says which frame we're doing is not. Let's see. That's because this part right here. That's because this part right here, this which frame we're dealing with, is not the same as up here. That's just to show you, if you know one thing in your program doesn't match, your whole program won't work. So we just fixed that part. This is good for you to see. Control C, and then I'm just gonna paste this here. Let's see. Okay. Man. Let's see. Okay, so good. This part matches what it says up here. Okay, so now let's run our program and see what happens. Okay, so it worked that time. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So if I press the right arrow key, Henry walks to the right. And if I press the left arrow key, Henry walks to the left. So that's what we wanted. Okay, so now let's go up and try to put in our punch animation. I always like to put parentheses between my draw image functions, you know, just to keep things consistent and looking alike, and it's easier to learn better if everything is repetitious. Okay, so let's go back up here, and we're going to work with our punch. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a little space between the walking stuff and the punch stuff. For the punch, I'm going to paste in the 2 punch images and the 2 punch starting coordinates. So let's go down here, and I'm going to paste these things in. So all we're trying to do is line up our punches with our walking image. And you'll see what I mean in a second. And then we're going to draw them in. Let's push these together. Okay, so let me show you how this works. Let's just run the game so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so as you see, I put in both the left punch and the right punch, and I lined them up with so it all can move together. And let me show you what I mean by lining stuff up. Let's go back to this start part here. Let's say I take away this 0.5. Now let's look at what it looks like. See, as you see, my right animation, it's like way over here. And we don't want that. We want both punch animations to be on the exact coordinates as the walking animation. Otherwise, when you hit the A button, the punch will start way out here instead of where the character is. And you don't want that because we want it to look natural. So that's what that is. So I'm gonna put that back. You can experiment with these numbers to, see what they do and see how they work and what happens when you don't have certain things. That's part of programming is learning, is just experiment with stuff sometimes. So now we're going to go back up here. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with the actual execution of the punch. So I'm going to paste in this code here. And let's pull this back up. Like I said, don't let all this stuff scare you. Okay, so all these right here has to do with the image. Every time we press the A button, the player will disappear while either he is punching to the left or punching to the right. That's what's going to give the illusion of the player punching. And you'll see what I mean in a second. And then these two right and left, that's just to tell the computer which way the player is facing. And we're going to use the same timer that we used. We're going to use these timers down here too, so to save some time. Well, let's go down here and paste in the code. Don't let it scare you, because I'm going to explain. So first of all, between these two ifs, this if statement and this end if, these two things, it's just a timer that we use for our walking animation. And we put this at the bottom of this true statement here. And what we have here is if the A button is pressed and our player is facing to the right, then the punch right animation will start. Otherwise, else means otherwise, the punch animation will not go. The same thing with this left down here. If the A button is pressed and the player is facing to the left punch animation will go. Otherwise, else means otherwise, the punch animation will not go. We're going to go down to our right walking animation, and we're going to put in equals true because the player is going to the right, and then left equals false because the player is going to the right. And then we're going to just copy and paste this and put the same thing right here. And now that we're going to the left, the right will be false and the left will be true. What this does is it tells the computer which direction our player is facing. We're in our update section, not our render section, but our update section. And the way we have it set up is we included the same timer that we use for our walking animation. And all this says is if the A button is pressed and the player is facing to the right, then execute the right punch. Otherwise, else means otherwise, don't execute the right punch animation. Same thing here. The timer between these amount of seconds, if the A key is pressed and the player is faced to the left, then execute the left punch animation. Otherwise, don't execute the left punch animation. And the last thing that we got to do is we just got to put these in their corresponding if statements. Our if statement here, then okay, and if, there you go. Just gonna put some space between these two. Let's see what happens when we run this. So let's see what happens. See, our player punches naturally, and that's what we want. And like I always say in my video, that's not just good, that's good. Next, we're going to add in our enemy. Now, first of all, I already made the images that I'm going to use for my enemy. And I made the enemy the exact same way that I did my player character. In fact, this is the player character. It's me. I just did this with my cell phone. Just made a cell phone video. I put a winter cap on and a red shirt and some jeans. And I just made this with my cell phone. It's me and this is me. They're both me. Player and enemy are me. Anyway, okay, so I got my walking animation, and I also have my left punch animation and my right punch animation. If he gets hit with the left punch, he goes down this way, and right punch, he goes down this way. Okay, so I'm just going to move this up here. After that, I'm just going to paste in this code here. What this is the exact same code that I have up here. I just added the word enemy in front of all the words. It's even all in the same order, too. See? Henry walking, enemy walking. The amount of frames that we got all together, enemy amount of frames that we got all together. Henry position, enemy position. And that's just another way that I organize things when I do my coding, too. It's just an idea. So we set up our variables here, and we got our animation variable. So let's go down here, and then I'm going to just paste in these things, too. The enemy and the right punch PNG and the left punch PNG. We're not going to worry about the down animations yet. We'll just work with this first. And I'm just going to leave a little space between these things. I'm going to put some space between this background too, so you can see how they compare. You know, enemy walking, enemy walking. Punch right image, enemy punch right image. Punch left image, enemy punch left image. See, I mean, once again, I organize them like that. Okay, so let's go down to the render section, and I'm going to do it again down here. See, if not enemy punch to the right, and if not enemy punch to the left, the enemy will continue walking. That's what this says. And then this is what happens when the enemy punches to the right, and this is what happens if the enemy punches to the left. Once again, I put some space between my player character and my enemy character, and my background. I put the space between. And next thing I'm going to put in is the movement stuff. This part right here is the AI. For example, now this says if Henry is on the left side of the enemy, then the enemy will go to the right to chase Henry. And then likewise, if Henry is on the left side of the enemy will chase Henry to the left. Now between here and here, this is the code for if the enemy moves to the right. And once again, we got our animations. This little part is animation, and this part is movement. And then I did the same thing here, except for between here and here has to do with the movement towards the left direction. And this is the animation part. Now let's see what happens when we run our game. He's walking around. So next we're going to work with collisions. So we're going to go back up to the top. Paste this in right here. The width and height of Henry. Remember, it's 70 by 111. And we're going to do the same thing for the enemy. I put it near the enemy's position, because it has to do with the makeup of the enemy. And I'm just going to add this right here. This is a function. This function has a name called rex overlap, meaning rectangle overlaps. These float variables here has to do with the parameters. This parameter would be the player's x coordinate. This would be the player's y coordinate. This would be the width of the player. This would be the height of the player. These variables with the 2 on them are the enemy variable. This is the enemy's x coordinates, enemy's y coordinates, enemy's width, and enemy's height. And down here is how we're going to do the collision stuff. And then you always return true. In every image that we use in our game, including the animation, it amounts to just a big rectangle. The same thing is true with our player's rectangle. When this rectangle and this rectangle collides, we'll be telling the program to do something. So that explains how this function works. This is our collision function that you use in all your games. So that's what this is. It has to do when both rectangles collide, or we're going to have some kind of event that happens after that. So again, just copy this. Don't even try to. And this function could be used in all your games, unless you find a better formula. This is a rectangular collision formula. We'll just put these collision variables right here. Okay. We'll go back down to the render section. Let's go to the bottom here. I'm just going to paste in this code right here. So this is saying if those two rectangles that I told you about, the player's rectangle, which takes into account where the player is located and the player's width and height, the enemy's location and its width and height. If those two rectangles collide, then first of all you get this message here, and depending on which direction the enemy is coming from, it's coming from the right side, you get this message here. If it's colliding from the left side, you get this message here. Let's pull this back over here. Last thing, these 30s that I put on here, I'm just trying to align the rectangle up as much as possible. In fact, I'm going to post these rectangles in so you can see what's going on, and then I can show you how it works. Okay, let's launch our game. That's when the left. This is when the enemy's coming from the right. Next thing is, okay, so now we're going to make it so that our enemy actually punches if he's standing there too long. If the player collides from the right, this timer will begin, and if the player collides from the left, this left timer will begin. And then we have the actual timers, the punch right timer or the punch left timer. So let me show you how I'm going to implement this. Go back down to the render section. So here we got, if there's a collision and the enemy's coming from the right, then the right timer begins. If not, the timer doesn't happen. And we had the same thing here. If the enemy's coming from the left, then the left timer begins. Otherwise, it doesn't happen, or it stops. And so now that we got our punch timers, we're gonna go down here. I'm just gonna move this down here, and then so now I'm putting when the actual timer begins. When if this goes off, then this happens. If this goes off, then this happens. Then finally, we're gonna put in the execution of these things. So when the timer reaches 100, the enemy will actually punch. It will actually draw the punch animation. Remember, we up here. Remember here, we already wrote our right punch command, and we already wrote our left punch command. You remember these Boolean variables that we talked about earlier? So here's when this stuff is actually implemented. So when the punch timer gets to 100, that's when the enemy punches. And when the punch timer goes past 120, that's when the punch stops, or the enemy's fists go down. And same thing happens with the left. So let me show you. Oh wow. Oh wow, so we got to fix these coordinates. I'm glad you're ready to see this. So we just gotta, we'll go back to our own create section. Let's try minus 0.5. And let's take this 0.5 off. And for the left, let's see what happens if we take this off too. Okay, now let's see if it aligns better now. Okay, let's see what happens now. Oh, very good. All right, so it works. Okay, let's see what happens when he comes from the back. Okay, so that works too. And I'm glad you were able to see that what happens when these things are not aligned correctly. See that the enemy is actually disappearing, and it just leaves the punch animation, giving the illusion of the enemy actually punching. That's not just good, that's good. Okay, so while we're at it, let's go ahead and build a life meter too. All life meter is going to be is just a rectangle. So I'm just going to go below, the Henry makeup, and I'm just going to paste in this code here. And another thing that I'm doing is I'm showing you a different way of writing variables in this programming language. You could either do it this way. You could field life meter y float equals 30, field life meter float field life meter h. You know, the way we were doing it earlier. And then erase all this, and you'll still get the same result. But for learning purposes, let's just do it this way for now. So we got our life meter. So let's go down to back to where we were at in our code. Let's paste it down here. One thing I like about BASIC is, you know, we have all these spaces in between our program. But if you're working with a language like Python or something, you can't do that. You know, everything has to be indented properly. So that's what I like about BASIC. You can do these little liberal things like that. Okay, so next we're going to put in our actual life meter in, and that's just a rectangle. And then I'm just going to copy these two collision codes, and I'm going to put them down here. I'm going to erase all this stuff. Then I'm just going to copy this and paste this here, and then put the word right. Same thing here. Just paste this here. Then I'm going to type life meter w minus equals 1. Same thing here. What I'm essentially saying is, if there's a collision and the enemy punches to the right and essentially hits Henry, it takes points off the life meter, or it takes points off the width of the life meter. This, remember, this part means width, you know, and it's going to take away from this width here. And then same thing with the left punch. Works the same way. So let's see what happens now. Life meter rectangle's up here, and see, every time he punches, the life meter go down. Let's see what happens when he does it from the right too. Same thing with the right. Okay, so now let's make it so that Henry can punch back too, and take the player down. Okay, so now I'm just gonna paste in some more variables. So what we have here is we had an enemy down to the right image, and then we also got the enemy down to the left image. We also got the variables of whether the enemy has been hit from the right or whether the enemy has been hit from the left. If he's been hit with the right hand, he goes down towards the left, and if the enemy has been hit with the left, he goes down towards the right. And this is just to make the animations reflect the direction in which the enemy has been hit. The enemy down right and the enemy down left are just starters for these two timers here that tells how long the enemy will be down until it disappears. Okay, so now let's go down to, okay, so here we're going to make it so that the enemy can't take away from our life meter, you know, if it punches while it's down and if something weird goes on. And we're going to do the same thing here. And for here, when Henry punches the enemy, we obviously can't punch the enemy while it's down. And same thing goes for the left side too. Later we're going to run this game and see the results of this and see if anything weird happens. That way you'll see what I'm talking about if it. So let's go down. Make sure everything's okay here. And make sure everything is... I'm sorry, let's make this 1000 too. So anytime you hit the enemy, it's going to come back off screen. Let's run our game and see what happens. Okay, so let's see. Oops. I saw what happened. We have two versions of our enemy, but it still went off screen. So we got to fix it. Let me show you again. See, so we gotta fix that. So I hope you're seeing what I mean. Will look weird if we don't have everything set up properly. So we're gonna go back to our draw function right here. Paste this in. Now let's see what happens. Okay, so shouldn't be able to move either. But let's see what happens when on the left side. The right side where we just got to stop it from moving, and then let's see. And we just got to stop it from moving to the left too. Let's go down and stop it from moving. That will be this part here for the right side, and that'll be this part here for the left side. Let's also stop the walking animation too. Make sure it's not walking while it's down. So okay, so now let's see what happens. Okay, so that worked. It comes back. Okay, so let's see what happens when we do it from the left side. You know, you can always make you can always do like -1000 and make the enemy come back from the left side, and we're gonna do that too. But now we're just testing this out, and that worked too. Okay, so good. And you know, if you want to just have a little boxing game or something like that, you can just you can just do this all day too. That'd be fun. But okay, so let's go back out. And we might as well, I guess we might as well, this is just, it's up to you, but we might as well make this 1000, -1000. Let's see what happens now. Okay, so if it was hit from the right, it comes back from the right. And if it's hit from the left, it comes back from the left. Wow, we're almost done. That's not just good, that's good. So the next thing that we're going to do is add sound. And adding the sound in this program is very easy. So the first thing that we're going to do is paste in these variables here. And then we're going to go down to uncreate and put in the punch sound. And then we're going to put in the music. I'm going to put play music. And the music is called Gracious. Songs I made up. I'm actually a music teacher by day, and I do this programming by night. And next we're going to go down to the punch section. So here when Henry punches, it's going to make the punch sound. And same here too. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Yay! Yeah! So now not only are we playing a game, we're also jamming. Oh, and we got sound too. See the punch sound worked. Yeah. Now we playing a game. Okay, so the next thing that I want to add is jumping. And that will be very easy too. So let's go back up to the top again. And we're going to add 2 variables in for jumping. One is for when the jump is executed when the button is pressed, and one is for the time, how long the player is going to go up, and then how long the player is going to go down. So let me show you. So first we're going to go to the unupdate section, and then we're going to type your key down. We're going to put the jump on the S key. So that means jump equals true. Okay, so got that. So now we're gonna go down to the render section. Let's do it near this. Let's put it near this walking section. When the jump button is pressed, the jump timer starts. And if the timer is less than 80, Henry continues to go up. Otherwise, Henry goes down. And then when the jump timer reaches 160, which is, by the way, is 80 times 2. I mean, to keep it even, I'm making it an increment of 80 going up and then another 80 going down, which equals 160. So by the time the player comes down, jump timer will be 160 to keep it even. And then once that happens, the jump timer goes back to 0 and jump equals false, meaning that this whole if statement here is closed out or canceled. Okay, so let's see how this works. Okay, so good. Your jump's pretty good. Alright, so next thing, let's add in a scrolling background. So this is the scrolling background that I made. I made this with a digital camera mostly. You got all these in the background. I couldn't help. All these is one of my favorite stores, so I just had to include it here. So we got this background here. I'm just going to save this. Okay, so now we're going to just go down to the background section and just change out the background. So instead of my background, we're going to have street.png. So that's taken care of. And the next thing, we're going to change this code. So since we're going to be doing a scrolling background now, we're going to go down to the walking section. Oh, here we are. So I'm just going to put some space between here. And then I'm just going to paste in this part. So this essentially says Henry's going to walk, but once he gets to the 300 coordinate, that's when the background will start scrolling. And Henry won't be able to go any further than the X coordinate of 300. Kind of like, the old Nintendo game Mario. Before the background scrolls, Mario got to get to a certain coordinate. And I'm going to show you that again when we run our game. And we're going to go down here to this left, and we're just going to post something similar for the left. So when Henry goes back to the 100th X coordinate, the background will go back the other way, and it'll look like Henry's going back. So let me show you how all this looks. Okay, so there you go. You see? Now, when Henry can move around all until he gets to the 300th X coordinate. And the same thing is true when Henry gets to the 100th X coordinate. He goes back. So that's what we want. And one thing I want to do now is I want to get rid of those rectangles, because we don't need those rectangles anymore. So I'm just going to scroll down and just comment out the rectangles. I usually don't delete things like that because you never know when we're going to need them again. So I usually just comment out those little helper rectangles. So let's play this again. See? Wow. See? So now it's looking more like a game now. Sounding like a game too. And then we got our jump. Okay, so that's what we needed. Okay, and so the last thing that we're going to add is we're just going to add an ending to our level. I made this to let you know that we made it to the end of our level. And now I'm going to paste these variables in here. So this was the goal image that we just saw. And this is to launch that image. And this is the timer for the level to just close itself out. Oh, let's not forget to put the Boolean variable pertaining to that. So this will be a bool, and we're going to set this to true. So, and then we'll go to our onCreate. Then we'll add in the goal sign. Then we'll go down to, we're going to go down to this background section, because of course the goal section is part of the background. So I'm just going to paste in this code, and I'm going to delete this background here. This we just made this background part of the first level. So this says if level 1 is true, play the background, that scrolling background that we made, and when that scrolling background gets to the coordinate minus 1975, launch the goal sign, letting the player know that they made it to the end of the level. That will be the sign that you just saw. Then once that goal is launched, the level timer starts, and at the end of 200 seconds that level will close out. What I'm going to do is wrap this entire code around a big Boolean variable. I'm going to do this so that all this stuff just pertains to, we're on our level, but once we exit this level, all the stuff that we wrote will no longer be true. So down to here. So this will be just like a big game over kind of thing. This is how you make your game over screen too, but we're just doing it in a different way. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Okay, so pay attention to the coordinates of these background coordinates here. Oops. Okay, there you go. And the game ended. I can't even control the character anymore. So we made it to the end of this tutorial. I hope that this helps you get started in making games in the Cerberus X game programming language. And I hope this tutorial introduced you to some programming concepts in general. This kind of knowledge not only transferred to making games, but this could be the predecessor for you being able to build websites and all that other kind of stuff too. So I hope this helps. Until next time, thanks.